Well, they had some of the ones that basically.
It's 130.
Yeah. It was more situations.
Would you mind? I usually
Okay, everyone, we're gonna get started. Thank you for coming to our HIPS meeting tonight. I am very glad to introduce you to Chad Duffaut. He graduated with his master's in history from Southeastern. He actually worked in the GA office where a bunch of us work right now. So he has a very personal relationship with our school. He was my high school history teacher. Yeah. A lot of the reason I'm here as well. So that's kind of fun. And he's going to talk to us today about golf. So give him another round.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing that she's in the history department now. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Chad Duffaut. I'm a two-time graduate here at Southeastern. I graduated here with my bachelor's in 2014, graduated in 2019 with my master's. Some of my heroes are here in the audience right now. I remember Dr. Cavell, my thesis work.
That's a good thesis.
Thank you.
I like it.
Oh, yeah. I've had Mr. Elliott, of course, for early American history. Dr. Rob's been with me for undergrad, graduate. And honestly, it's good to be back home. You know, sometimes it's good to just go back to where things started, where you see how life just kind of gets crazy after a few years and just, ultimately what brought you to the point that you get to now. So when I first started researching this topic that we're talking about tonight, I had actually had a paper that made some circulation around. It was a paper called Obstruction. You can read it on UL's website if you want to just go stalk me, I guess. But in that paper, it was more of a general overview of the idea of desegregation across the South and the first battlegrounds being golf courses. So everyone knows about Brown v. Board. Everyone knows about the desegregation movement and education. Very few people know about the ruling that came out about 6 months after the initial ruling of Brown v. Board. The courts ruled that those liberties basically granted under the Brown v. Board ruling should extend to public facilities. This included public parks, swimming pools, and golf courses that we're talking about here today. Some cases in that paper, the golf courses either quickly integrated. In one case in particular, in the city of Birmingham, the mayor forcibly shut down the golf courses. Basically said, we're not going to integrate. And a year and a half later, he was up for re-election. And his opponent ran on the campaign of, if you elect me, I'll reopen the golf courses. And he won in a landslide. Fully integrated, said, look, we just want to play golf again. We don't really care about this that much. So that all to say, why is golf that big of a deal? Let's start real quick. Talking about the greatest golfer to never play, but let's talk about some of the people who have played. You might have heard of them. Maybe you've heard the name Walter Hagen. If you go to Dick's Sporting Goods, they have the Walter Hagen brand, things like that. One of the greatest golfers to play in the early days of the PGA Tour. Byron Nelson, tied for the all-time wins in terms of PGA Tour history, with another name you'll see in just a bit. Arnold Palmer, the drink you order at your favorite restaurant of choice, right? Sometimes. Or at least you've heard that name before in the beverage form. Jack Nicklaus, for my older folks in the audience, this might be, okay, this is where golf starts to become a little bit more familiar in terms of recognizing names. Let's get this out of the way. We've all heard that name before, right? Tiger Woods. Tied with Byron Nelson for the most wins on the PGA Tour of all time. Now, all five of these men here had something that our person we're talking about tonight didn't. This game of golf is interesting because you say, why should we focus on golf? Why should we look at golf from a standpoint of a historical battleground, from the standpoint of this is a spot in history that proves to be one of the lesser known battles of the civil rights movement, and one of the ones that brought about the normalcy of integration across the South. These men, most of which grew up in a time of segregation, specifically the top three here, Jack Nicholas towards the end. All of these men had something that got them to where they would eventually get to. We often hear that saying, golf is a rich white man's sport, right? People with money play golf. Lawyers play golf. Any future lawyers in here? There we go. There we go. There we go. Business deals are done on the links, on the greens, right? The idea behind what we're talking about here, though, with golf, you have to have money to play, right? You have to be able to afford clubs, balls, tees, maybe a membership at your local country club, municipal golf course, if you want to go that route, right? Public golf course, nothing wrong with that. You also have to have support, not just from, and this is getting more into the professional, into the more practice idea. You might have been the byproduct of a family that your parents threw you in soccer, or they threw you in basketball or baseball or something. You get the idea. Early on, they try to find a sport for you to really put you in, to really get you motivated, to really get you invested in that, right? Support, not just from your family, right? From your community as well. Having access to facilities that could ultimately change the tide for you. And of course, your avenues in. Specifically, the avenues that are presented to the likes of, say, Tiger Woods, the only member on that list who is African American, who grew up in a time where he did not have to endure municipal courses denying him based on the color of his skin. For virtually all blacks in the late 1800s to the end of segregation, that's non-existent. There is very little support. There are no avenues in. There is no money to really fund this sport going forward. That's the end of the lecture, right? That's the end of our story, right? Yeah, good talk. Question? I'm kidding. Why does this matter? What contribution did blacks have to the game during this era of division? A game of privilege that only the privileged in society, only those that had the means to afford it, only those that had the support around them, and only those that had the avenues to get in. What contributions could they possibly have to this game? Well, first off, we have a few early contributions to the game, specifically in the forms of innovation. Popular sport came into play. There's limitations due in part to Jim Crow segregation laws throughout the South. We know this. Most, if not all, golf courses throughout the South barred any form of participation in the sport whatsoever. But there are ways to at least contribute to the game. For starters, George Grant, pictured right here, inventor of the first wooden tee patent right here, 1899, granted to him. And you would think that is going to be awesome. That is the father of the modern golf tee right there, right? Unfortunately for him, it doesn't sell very well. And in 1924, he experiences competition for a similar patent, almost exactly to the design you see right here, by one Dr. William Lau, who was granted that patent, is put into the golf histories as the father of the modern tee, the inventor of the first tee, where George Grant is sort of sidelined because of that, even though he had beaten Lau 25 years to the punch. To those histories, to those authorities crafting this was seen as inefficient. No one will ever buy this. No one will ever use this. Grass tees were still the norm. There are early paths to enter the game itself. Oftentimes, African Americans find their avenue into the golf course simply by caddying. Usually as young as 6 years old, The teenagers would carry bags for patrons as a means of helping families earn additional income, as a means of getting them out the house, finding ways to participate, play in a safe environment. I say play, but the idea being they are going to help the family while also keeping them occupied. There are several projects around the South, including a few we'll mention here in New Orleans for obvious reasons, in which we see Black labor help to develop courses, and in one very special case is the architect behind many of the courses we're going to talk about today. Later names that are going to come into play include Charlie Sifford. Charlie Sifford is the Jackie Robinson of the PGA Tour. He is the first African-American to break the color barrier. He is the first one to properly earn his PGA Tour card in 1961. He had been trying for nearly a decade to earn that card in the 50s, was denied at tournaments, was denied participation in the Masters of all tournaments. He had won a tournament 2 weeks before, which, for those of you that don't know what the Masters is, in April, you have a significant other that loves golf, they're usually gone that entire week, right? Just watching, hoping Tiger Woods is going to show up and win the green jacket again, right? 2 weeks before that, before the Masters tournament that year, Sifford had won a tournament, but they didn't count it. And the reason why is because they claimed, even though traditionally Masters tournaments, you could qualify for it up to a week in advance. You win at the tournament the previous week, you're in. Sifford was denied that. They changed the rules, altered the rules at the last minute, and simply said, yeah, that tournament doesn't count because of low participation. It was off on the West Coast. It was barely a PGA Tour event. Sorry. Charlie Sifford never got to play at the Masters. He would get to play at the U.S. Open, the British Open. He would place in the top 20 at the U.S. Open. But these are stories that sort of sandwich each other. We start at the beginning talking about entry of African Americans into the sport of golf. And then we talk about the end in terms of how we finally break through, how we see African Americans eventually enter the sport and ultimately pave the way for the likes of people like Tiger Woods, right? These are names that help the game overall, but what about names in our own backyard? Are there any that we can point to and simply say they move the game forward from a regional perspective here in the greater New Orleans area? Allow me to introduce you to Joey B. Joseph Bartholomew Sr., born 1888, to parents that immediately put him to work at the age of 7 to help earn that additional income in the household. He is first going to age 7, age 8, turned 8 that year. His first iteration of entering the sport came as a caddy at the Audubon Golf Club, where patrons and participants found that he had a keen eye for the game. He could spot balls in the rough that nobody else could. He seemed to understand the movements, the knowledge behind the fundamental swing you would need to hit the ball properly. So much so that some patrons even decided, despite the fact that this is a segregated South, despite the fact that he is not allowed to play on the course, that they would request him to be their caddy because they just wanted to see how he could actually swing. He took up the sport by copying those clients, and some of those clients, repeat clients, would allow him to play a few holes with him every now and then. Soon, whites and blacks alike, by the time he is entering junior golf era, basically 12, 13, see him as a budding star. This could potentially be the greatest golfer in the New Orleans region. So much so, he gets some attention. By 1910, that recognition is not just a New Orleans brand for blacks or whites. That is recognized nationally. People fly in, drive in. They want to come down and see Joey B. They want to see what this guy's made of. One such name you might have seen from earlier was Walter Hagen. Walter Hagen personally came down to New Orleans, requesting a round with Joseph Bartholomew, playing a full 18 with them, and was walked away relatively impressed. He would go on to be an 11-time major champion in the sport of golf, and had some remarkable things to say about him in terms of how he could swing the club, how quiet-natured he seemed to be. Even when he hit the big shots, he just didn't seem to brag about it. Gene Saracen, who would be the U.S. Open and PGA champion winner in 1922, the same exact year, would also come down to New Orleans, have some toe-to-toe rounds with him. But the most interesting and probably the most important one for Joey B's life is Fred McLeod, 1908 U.S. Open champion, head pro at Audubon Golf Club. He plays him more than any of these guys in the list combined. Bartholomew was once interviewed by some club members who were interested in the fact that McLeod had taken an interest in him. And he asked him very pointedly, like, so how'd your round go with old Fred over there? I beat him a few times. He beat me a few times. That's the interview. Okay. So with that in mind, McLeod does take a liking to him. They do play a few times here and there. Some rounds he wins, some rounds Joey wins. And McLeod decides this man is too good to pass up on. He offers him a job as his assistant pro at Audubon Golf Club. The membership initially balked at the idea and said, that is absurd. You cannot hire him. We won't allow this. And McLeod stood his ground and simply said, you can play somewhere else then. By 1921, nearly a decade after their initial meeting, he goes on to become a skilled club maker. He ends up teaching lessons at the club itself. He becomes the groundskeeper. He becomes has a keen eye for course management, how things should be laid out, hole placement, things like that. White clients, again, initially balked at the idea. McLeod said, go somewhere else. Until finally, he gets his big break. By 1922, a group that would form Metairie Golf Club was looking to build an 18-hole golf course. Bartholomew sees this as his big break, his big opportunity, because they approached McLeod asking if they knew of anyone that would be interested, to which they put his name up, Bartholomew's. H.T. Cottom had interviewed him. This is going to be the key financier behind Metairie Country Club. He personally backed him based on his interactions with them, based on his experience and getting clubs crafted, his knowledge of the game itself. And he went a step further. It wasn't simply like, here's the keys, go build it. He sent him to New York City to go study under the chief architect of golf at this point in time. This guy was considered to be the know-all of golf. And this is Seth Rayner, pictured right here. Seth had designed a few courses that are still in existence today, one of which, his original design for a course in Honolulu, Hawaii, which they play the Sony Open still to this day. He had gone up there. He had learned from Mr. Rayner about proper drainage, elevated greens. If you have your greens higher than the actual course itself, water is not going to collect as long as they're sloping off. In the 1920s, that's revolutionary. That's unheard of. That is what he wants to build Metairie Country Club just like. So the work begins. He returns. He finds the property heavily wooded. There is a lot of trees to clear, a lot of grass to plant, a lot of touching up to do. So knowing that he has a revolutionary idea, a new plan to build a golf course, he works under the cover of night. he is that scared, not necessarily of people asking him what he's doing on this land. He's more scared of the fact that people are going to copy his ideas, his methods, and immediately cut him out of the picture altogether. Months go by, and the membership of Metairie Country Club is fuming. There have been no reports, no updates on this project. Every time they pass by on the main road where the property is supposed to be, you still see the woods right there. It's only when he arranges a special meeting for some of the more skeptical members via horse carriage into the property proper that they discover he has been working secretly so that nobody else discovers what they're doing, but also silences all of the critics using Rayner's revolutionary idea for greens and design. He ultimately gets a raise as a result of it. Membership is so impressed, they leave him be. They say, take all the time you need. They double his salary. And the rest should be history, right? Metairie Country Club is going to open. It's going to be amazing. And he's going to be offered a job to stay there upon his employment. Way to go, Joey B. By the way, you're working as a club pro, a groundskeeper, a golf teacher. Okay, good, good. You're not allowed to play. Joseph Bartholomew is a tragic hero in terms of the game of golf in the New Orleans region, because courses we're going to talk about in just a bit had his name, had his design, his input, his architectural spirit behind it. And because we're heavy into the Jim Crow South at this point, Joseph Bartholomew now finds himself unable to play the game that he wants, even though this club would not exist without him. That is the dream out of reach. A change of scenery might come to play. This is City Park. We'll get there in just a sec. So he does leave for a brief stint to New Orleans Country Club, fed up with the treatment he got from Metairie. Once he's at New Orleans, he's actually going to jump ship to building another golf course. This is going to be City Park course number 1, not pictured right there. After its completion, he's immediately contracted to build the North Course, which is pictured right there. The North Course is the only golf course left in City Park. There used to be 4 golf courses here. Joey had built 2 of them, right? The North Course is the only one that survived Katrina. That is the only remnant we have left of Joseph Bartholomew's contribution to the City Park golf courses. And he's recognized throughout the region for his authority on design itself. He gets contracted, picked up to build golf courses all over this region. Hammond, what do we have in Hammond? Oh, no. Covington, Algiers, Abita Springs, that club recently closed. Slidell, there's a club over there called Pinewood that opened up in the 60s that he would have a hand in the design of. A few courses in Baton Rouge. He even built one in Mississippi. And while that all sounds great, while that all sounds fine, it's the exact same story. Every time he builds one, he is immediately denied the ability to play it. Every time the ribbon is cut, the pictures are taken, hands are shaken. Thank you. Get out. Some cases, specifically with City Park, in those 2 courses, back-to-back contracts, and the city refused to pay him. You should be honored that you got the privilege to do that. He's fed up. He decides that he's going to use his talents to try and build his own country club. The man who started with nothing has slowly amassed a smaller net worth. We'll talk about that in a second. He eventually will found Crescent City Country Club in Hareham. This no longer exists. Why? The course was for middle-class blacks in New Orleans. This was mostly just built for his friends that also were dealing with the same hardships, that wanted to play golf that he kept talking about. the problem that he ran into is there was not that much funding. The property was very small. The soil was very rocky. The greens were not as immaculate as they were at the other properties he had built. He had none of the assets that he had prior to with all the other projects he had built, nor did he garner much interest in trying to improve the conditions there. Unintentionally, it's because of how poorly the conditions are at Crescent City Country Club that some of the membership eventually decides to sue the city of New Orleans and say, you don't have a public facility, you don't have a golf course for us to use. Instead, you have given us a separate, and let's be real, we always hear that term, separate but equal. It's always separate but not equal facility. Meanwhile, Joey B has given up the sport of golf altogether. He opened a general contracting practice in 34. He is going to be granted and actually paid for this job the privilege of repaving Tulane Avenue. During World War II, his company is going to be an asset in helping shipbuilders down here, specifically working on the Higgins boat. He laid the foundation for numerous industries, housing projects across the city. Joey B's company was getting business, and he decided, I'm going to reinvest all of the profits I make in all this into insurance, real estate. He even invested in an ice cream manufacturing plant. By the time we get to the pinnacle of our story here today, his net worth was roughly $6 million in today's currency. He started from absolutely nothing and built that. He had gained a reputation from both blacks and whites in the city as someone who just found ways to make money. He would take impossible scenarios, impossible situations, hands that were dealt with the deck stacked against him, and he would still find a way to make a run at it. This leads us to the pinnacle. That lawsuit I mentioned earlier. Members at Harahan sued the city. 1953, we start to see a man by the name of Mayor Chat Morrison, the mayor of New Orleans, address the lawsuit, address some of the concerns that black citizens were having in New Orleans about, again, the lack of a municipal public golf course for them to play the sport at. They designed what would become a project for black middle-class professionals in a neighborhood known as Gentilly Woods, simply known as Gentilly today. Bartholomew, of course, would be contracted. He would be the one that would build the course. He would be asked to start with 9 holes. We'll open the course up after 9 holes, but while that's going on, you'll continue construction to eventually get it to a full 18, and then we'll be good from there. 1956 opened to 18 holes. About 2 years later, it would expand to 18 holes. And you would think, okay, recognize, okay, we've done it, right? We are going to get Joey B the recognition he needs. No payment. City balked at the payment, said, hey, you know what? That was good for your community. You should be grateful. He's heard this song and dance so many times. But Joey B's character was not something that would fight, was not somebody who would immediately take to the press, take to the courts, basically drag everybody in there to the point where their grandchildren would be fighting litigation. That's not Joey B. With reluctance, he quietly accepted what happened to him. But he also understood that this could be something that becomes even greater down the road. So later in life, he would use his money to donate funds to Southern University, Dillard University. He would eventually make his way to Pontchartrain Park. He would play golf well into his 80s, stopping about 2 years before his death. And again, never bragged about his achievements, despite the fact that this man has a hand in not just golf course development across New Orleans, but in the greater scheme of the development of New Orleans itself. Be it big or small in its role, Joey B was not one for the limelight, was not one to bring attention to himself. He just saw it as a quiet mission. Let others do the talking. He would die peacefully in his sleep at October 12th, 1971. It says 1871. I'm sorry about that. But his legacy doesn't end there. Instead, he posthumously gets inducted into the Greater New Orleans Sports Hall of Fame in 1872, or 1972. Why does it say 1872? Sorry. Here's the thing. He's the first African American to receive that honor. Little known fact about our own Sports Hall of Fame in this area for the state. He is the first African American to receive that honor in the state. He's also got a golf course named after him now. Pontchartrain Park, the same one that he built, the same one he didn't receive a dime for doing. 1979, it will be fully renovated, giving it a much proper facelift, rebuilding the clubhouse into a modern design that still gets updated today, with the course being renamed Joseph M. Bartholomew Senior Municipal Golf Course. Still around today, still available to play in Gentilly, and I can say several years ago playing that, by far one of the better kept courses I've ever played. So with that in mind, that's Joseph Bartholomew. Any questions?
You played that course?
Yes. I played it back in 2018, actually. So while I was still in grad school here, that was actually one of the inspirations behind that paper I would write on golf course integration across the South. Was I wanted to see what that course was for the specific part about Pontchartrain Park. Yeah.
Is the course in Covington Louis Prima's course?
Yeah, that one was torn down, and now there's like the Walmart there,
Yeah.
and the Copelands and everything.
Oh.
Yeah.
A lot of his courses didn't survive. The one in Mississippi, I couldn't find it anywhere. It was named. It was somewhere around the Picayune area. It's not Millbrook. Millbrook's a completely different course, but that one
And
doesn't
you said
exist.
the one in Abita, what was that? The $1 million? What was that?
Oh, you're talking about Money Hill? No.
Yeah, Money Hill. That one closed down too, right?
Money Hill still.
Oh,
He
okay.
didn't design Money Hill. I think it was just Abita Springs Country Club or something like that. It went through a couple of name changes, and then eventually it closed, actually as a consequence of COVID. So, yeah. Hello.
Did he have a signature in his course designs? Like, was there anything that you can point to and say, oh, that's definitely a Bartholomew course?
So he actually would take inspiration from Seth Rayner's design for green design. So specifically, his greens were typically anywhere from a foot to 2 feet elevated above the actual fairway itself. And it would have a sloping design, again, meant for that drainage issue. So in the 20s and 30s in New Orleans, that was unheard of. Even at Audubon Park, like it was notorious. If rain came through, they would have to almost squeegee the greens to basically have any chance of playing. The way he had designed his courses was so that if it does rain, yeah, the course is going to be muddy, but within a day, when it's dried up, you don't have standing water in the greens to worry about. So, hello.
I was wondering, I'm going to try to work my way through this question.
Go ahead.
As far as wording. So they posthumously awarded him a place in the Sports Hall of Fame.
Yep.
And renamed this course after him. When they did those things, was there like an apology with it, like an acknowledgement of what happened, or was it just implied for the people who were already aware?
The mayor at the time was actually, and it wasn't Morrison, it was somebody else, but the mayor who gave the speech for him at his ceremony made a comment about that. Actually, he's not actually, he doesn't get a formal apology. His family doesn't get that. They don't get any of the money that was lost because of those contracts. Instead, he says in the speech that it's almost sad in the sense that we're inducting a man who built these wonderful places for us, and he could never play them. So in a way, it was an acknowledgement of the fact that he was not allowed to play these courses. We owe a huge debt of gratitude for the fact that they exist, but also recognizing that due to Jim Crow due to the tensions of the South at this point. He unfortunately could never experience his own craft. So, you had a question?
So I have a question as regards to like, kind of, just, what would you say? Just integration in the South as far as golf goes and country clubs, because I had a teacher who was Jewish and she grew up in Miami and they had a big country club there and she wasn't allowed into it for a friend's birthday party. So I was wondering about like if New Orleans was quite progressive, like first off, and if that impacted the surrounding southern areas and like what kind of came first and how that kind of fell out.
New Orleans, I think progressive is, I think that's not quite the word I would use there. It's a little short of that. We have a very deep Creole culture here. I mean, the case that talks about Plessy v. Ferguson comes from New Orleans. The man who sues over racial discrimination in rail cars is literally 1/8 black. So you can barely tell in that sense. But as regards to the courses themselves and New Orleans area, and to kind of elaborate on that question there about the courses denying them, that's where you get into the discussion of public versus private. So with municipal, that's usually our way of saying it's a public course. Country clubs can be semi-private or they can be fully private. If they're semi-private, that means everything we talked about at the end, specifically with the the lawsuits, the attempts to integrate the golf courses. Once integration fully comes through, they have to abide by those rules. There are still courses in this country that don't allow Jews, don't allow blacks, don't allow women, don't allow specific ethnicities. Yes, there's one in New Jersey that does not even allow a woman to step foot on the grounds.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where?
That is, actually it's closer to DC. in that
Oh,
sense.
well, my cousin lives in New
Yeah.
Jersey. I was about to say, let's go over there.
So, I mean, all that to say, basically, like, there is, like, I mean, that's where you get into the public-private debate and what we see as socially acceptable versus what is not socially acceptable. And ultimately, the clubs that finance and fund those rules simply say, well, we don't take $1 of public money, so the membership knows exactly what they're signing up for, and they just have to deal with it.
Is it true that they had to change the bylaws of the Augusta to get Tiger Woods to be able to play there?
That was part of the reason Sifford was denied too, because they made some funny baloney rules towards the end that his tournament didn't count. It's because Sifford would have been the first African-American to actually play there. There are a couple of others that would later get to that point. Sifford never would step foot on the grounds of Augusta, but you never actually play Augusta as an official member of the Masters tournament.
It's incredible to think Tiger Woods is the first African-American man that gets to play on that course.
Not quite the first, but he's definitely the first to win. So yeah, he's the first to
The first to get the green jacket.
First to get the green jacket in that regard, yes. I saw a hand up there.
He said that he designed 2 of City Park's courses.
Mm-hmm.
Why not the other 2?
So the other 2 were already pre-existing.
Okay.
So they were already there. They had bought up some more property. They wanted to expand on that land, and they already heard rave reviews about Metairie Country Club. So he was easily the guy they picked for that job. So they said, you design this one. After you're done with that, go design this one. Then we'll pay you. And they never did.
That's the same course at Metairie today, too, right?
The North course is, yeah. So that was the second course he designed. Yep. Oh, hello.
You mentioned he contributed to like HBCUs. Did he have any formal education?
No, not really. No.
Support the cause?
He was someone who did believe in education propelling, especially African American communities forward. He himself worked from an early age. He was again caddying at the age of 7, age of 8. He was someone that took a liking to the game itself, and say he had a PhD in life at that point, you know. But the idea was he essentially developed his own street smarts, his own understanding of construction, and honestly, the closest he ever got to a formal education was probably his time spent in New York with Seth Rayner, who fundamentally set him up for the reason we're talking about him today. So.
Yes, Dr.
Is he related in any way to Sydney?
Sydney Barthol, that I do not.
It's spelled the same.
Nah,
No?
no, never, no. Hello.
I have a what if. So, so if people like, when you were talking about when they designated the golf club to him and things like that, you know, if people actually like acknowledge his contributions to the golf community and to the Black community in New Orleans, what would you personally like to see, you know, as far as the acknowledgement?
You know, with the course itself being named in his honor, the closest thing we can get at that point, assuming you know there could be some form of going back or returning those promises that were made to him in terms of honoring the contracts, of course, to his family. But at the very least, there could be dedicated plaques to the remaining courses that still exist that either he designed, he built, or did both.
The one in City Park doesn't have like a plaque or anything like that?
I think North Course has a plaque on one of the holes, at least acknowledging that, you know, this was his design in this case, but the other course that was there, that's gone.
Oh, yeah, because that was the one that was right by where that school lot used to be, right? And it all got like messed up during Katrina.
Actually, that one's still there. That's the one, yeah.
Oh, okay,
So
yeah, that's not.
Yeah, that's North Course. So that's they also call that one the Irons course because it's so short. So in golf you have par threes, which is, you know, how many strokes it would take to get there, as well as par fours and fives. That course, or for a typical golf course, you usually have 2 par fives. You have let's say 2 par fives. I'm sorry. You have 4 par fives total on the course, 4 par threes. Everything else is a par 4. That one only has 1 par 5. And yeah, it's a really small course. It's a fun course, but it's really small. Yes.
This is for your benefit and Haley's as well.
Okay.
I got a text from Dr. Amber Nera, who's with the honors program, saying her husband is a golfer. And she said he absolutely loves Joe Bartholomew. He's actually at a PGA meeting. She's in San Diego at the National Honors Conference and jumped into this lecture. So the link worked.
Oh.
And he absolutely loved it and is asking for a recording.
I have it. I recorded it.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Awesome.
could be. Could be.
And
Any other questions? Okay. And before everyone gets up and leaves, I would like to present you with a certificate. We might also have a copy of your flyer.
Oh, nice.
Yes, made with love.
Oh, this
By
is.
Madison.
Madison has done so well. You know, where the golf course is still in New Orleans, but not New Orleans, brain's not functioning. Covington, where it used to be right there, the Copelands is, that's still called Louis.
Oh, wait, I'm doing something wrong.
Really?
Yeah, where the golf course used to be, and that's like it's just that the name of the street. It's like when my parents moved to the North Shore from New Orleans, like they were like, oh, there's like a